Continuing on a look at the future, I want to talk a little bit about distribution. And we already talked about that a couple days ago, but this take on it may surprise you. Hey there, this is Perch. Continuing the series on change and making some predictions for the future of comics. And I'm specifically being pretty, I don't know, I try to be very specific about these predictions. I'm okay if these don't come to pass and I'm completely wrong. But I hate it when people give predictions like in the future there will be comics with superheroes and some of those comics will sell. That's not a prediction. That's you know it's just nonsense. And I think people like to make sure that they continue to look smart in the years to come. Well, good news, I don't care about any of that. So I want to kind of get more bold with today and tomorrow is kind of wrap up this series. I think this will be a Monday through Friday little event. It's a perch event that we're doing around kind of the future. And I want to specifically talk about not necessarily distribution, because we talked about that a bit already, but recommendations and finding content. So if you've been listening along so far, I do believe digital is going to rise, just in a very different format from how it is now. Think about individual packets being passed around, like photos or videos. There's some people who have made a lot of money doing YouTube content, not stuff like what I'm doing, not commentary, and certainly not outrage videos, but actual, produced content. For example, there's this guy Ozzy Man. He does commentary on top of videos, so he makes essentially a new product from an existing product, where his commentary is the selling itself. And this guy is doing quite well. He's got a huge subscriber base. He does great with monetization, and he's getting sponsorships and other things lined up for himself. He's doing quite well. The interesting aspect of him and others like him is that people who make these kind of either quick Vine videos, or there's some people who do magic tricks type stuff. Those people are making content that these companies actually want. What I'm doing right now is fine. It's filler content. If you get a bunch of subscribers, I'm making someone money. But it's not precisely what YouTube or what these different networks want. What they want is real content. They want stuff that's timeless. Stuff like what does Ozzy Man and other guys do. It's content that fills a unique void. And so if you think about that content being passed around, I like a video, I share it with somebody else, money is made in that process because I'm essentially broadening the user base of this piece of content. So now think about comics in the same way. If I read the new issue of Hickman's X-Men and I pass it to somebody else and they purchase it and read it, then I'm basically doing all the work for the company. The company gets to produce the title. I'm doing all the distribution. I'm doing the promotion. I'm doing the marketing. And I'm happy to do it because I like the content and I'm sharing it with my friend. And that's how comics is destined to change into. Because it's a piece of shareable media content, it makes so much sense to have it be consumed and passed and shared in that way. This is going to change a lot of how comic publishers and creators operate. They are going to have a much higher need to have a good relationship with their customers because their customers aren't effective distributors now. So if they make their customers happy, their customers are going to influence others. That's how the content is going to get sold. This is a healthy system. I think this is where a lot of different types of businesses have migrated. And if you look at the spread of digital, it takes one of two paths. Either the first path is digital itself is such a natural distribution and media consumption system that it just happens. This is what happened with music, and this is what happened with movies. The content came out, piracy was really heavy. People got very used to that system. It was easy. And then the companies came in behind it and started monetizing it, all within a really quick amount of time. And the reason being is it was just easier. Movies being sold digitally and music being sold digitally made a lot of sense. Now, there's plenty of people who say, hey, I don't trust it. I need to have the physical copy because what if the company goes out of business or they decide I don't own it anymore? or they start changing the movie or the music, and then I just have to get an update to have it. Essentially, I'm renting the content now. I don't own anything, and that is something that's going to play out. It's going to play out when one of these major players goes under and all that content disappears. I think, if I'm predicting kind of further, I think if Facebook has some real troubles and they go under, or they get broken up, or they become like MySpace, they become irrelevant, however happens, I think that's an example of there's a lot of content and material people have poured into that platform. And if it suddenly goes away, there's going to be, outrage. And that's sharing stuff for free. If you look at a system like, if you buy a Disney digital film, they vend it through another system, another company that basically helps provide the digital film. They may not actually, they may own it now, but at least 2 years ago they didn't. They used a third party. If that third party goes under, there's going to be a scramble to figure out where the content is. And I think that that's going to happen. But in general, the majority of people have gotten accustomed to paying for digital, getting it, not worrying about where it lives. That's path number one. Path number two is when the content doesn't really fit digital. And unfortunately, books and magazines and comics fit into this. Books and comics and magazines haven't naturally fit into digital as a platform, so they suffer. The solution to that is by peer-to-peer recommendation and sharing. It's basically getting the companies getting out of the way of pushing that process and letting the readers do it for them. And that is slowly happening with magazines. It's sort of happening with books. You see people make Amazon recommendations. And nothing is happening with comics because the people in charge of comics with the big publishers are idiots. There's just no other better way to put it. They're still trying to bang their hammer against a wall of the old system that clearly isn't going to work. And if you went to Comic-Con in 2019, you heard some people talking about it's only a matter of time before we have our own iTunes and our own digital system. It's like, you're insane. At this point, you're insane. It's not going to work. So what that means is peer-to-peer. And that means that publishers are going to have a very good relationship with different people who are making the comments and sharing, the big-time comic book influencers. Now, the comic book influencers are not going to be the people that kind of exist today. They've burned their credibility through outrage, either videos or ads or magazine articles or other things. And here you may think I'm talking about Richard Meyer or people like that. I'm not. I'm actually talking about the established people that the publishers have connected with. I'm talking about the Bleeding Cools of the world. I'm talking about the CBRs and Newsaramas. Newsarama has done the best job of being relatively neutral in all things comics, but Bleeding Cool has a horrendous reputation. And while they may be able to say, hey, go buy this comic, the indicator of how successful they're going to be as an influencer is in their traffic and their comments. You can look up at least a prediction of their traffic online, but more importantly, you can look at the comments in the article. Rich Johnson is, in effect, the showrunner of Bleeding Cool. If you look at his articles and then you look at the comments on his articles, unless the article is particularly spicy or clickbaity or basically encouraging a fight, the comments are generally a wasteland of nothing. People don't go in. And the challenge there is, if you're recommending something, typically you have to recommend it in a positive way. You can't do an article about, hey, this creator over here is a white supremacist, go buy their comic. That doesn't work. People are not going to latch on to that type of content. They're going to go with, I enjoyed this comic, here's a good review, I liked it, buy it. And the problem with a lot of the news sites that exist in comics is that the reviews are awful. They're shills for the comic with no credibility and no background and no depth. And they exist solely so the publishers will continue to send them free comics. That's a huge problem. That they're not going to sell actual content based on that. People can sniff out, things that aren't authentic. And once again, if you go look at the comments, it's either people trolling these writers of these reviews saying you're an idiot, or it's just empty again. So how do comics get shared from peer to peer? Well, if you're harnessing social media properly, like a lot of people do, it's somebody like me saying, hey, I picked up this copy of whatever, East of West. I really, really liked it. You should try it. Here is the comic. The comic is included in the tweet. You click upon it. You're making a 99-cent purchase through your integrated credit card through your mobile phone or whatever it happens to be, and you're off and reading it. That's how comics are going to get distributed. And the funny thing is, it's not uncommon for a popular tweet of mine, and I'm a nobody, to get anywhere from 200 to 500 likes. I have some tweets that do much better than that. But think about it for a moment. If 10% of likes equal a purchase, then my 500, my 500 liked tweet means 50 units sold at 10%. Now, is that the way it's going to work? Probably not. But I'm one guy and I'm not a popular guy. I'm somebody with a lower follower count. I'm not one of the big names. If you start looking at how people with, 20 to 50,000 followers who have credibility with their fans, you make it easy to streamline distribution through them. That's how you're going to see a lot of comics rise. But again, you look at some of the very lower tier indie books that sell 2,000 copies, 5,000 copies. If me, a nobody, gets 50 copies of that comic sold, 50 doesn't sound like a lot, but that's 1%. You get 100 people like me, and there are way more than 100 people that are far more popular than me. And you can achieve those numbers with no diamond, no nobody in the middle. Now, a lot of what I'm talking about, you may be scratching your head. It's difficult to kind of comprehend how these different pieces go together. But this is how the future of distribution will work. The peer-to-peer model is proven in a lot of other digital areas and verticals, and it will be successful here. All it takes is getting the comic in a very clean, straightforward way and having a good relationship with your influencers. You can give them the comic ahead of time. With digital, it again becomes easy. You can have an encoded package that has a time box on it so that it can't be shared. That will help at least slow down some parts of how comics get distributed. But it just makes a lot of sense. And again, right now, if I pirated a comic, which I would absolutely never do, but if I pirated a comic and I said, this is really great, I think it's wonderful, here it is, here's the, I forget what the pirate called, here's the CBR right here inside my tweet. I love this issue of X-Men. It was really great. Why don't you check it out? Here you go. And there was a comic in the link. Well, first of all, if it was pirated and it's free, then I'm going to have hundreds of people reading the comic just from me. Again, no store, no distributor, nobody in the middle. Now, if there's a price tag on it and it's a cheap price tag, it's more equivalent to what movies are, which in a digital distribution model, it works. You'll still convert a ton of people. And I mean, the interesting part of what I'm saying here is you don't have to be a huge name to start to get some mass. If you've got a comic that's relatively popular, like say the X-Men, and you have 1,000 people talking about it, and those 1,000 people get 10 people to convert, that's 10,000 quote unquote sales from just people out there. That's how the model can work. Is it the only way? No. Is it all going to shift overnight? Absolutely not. But I do believe this is a big way of where it's heading. Because I'll give one other reason why this is important. This is how you, by the way, break the price down. Because in effect, you've got the creator, you've got a very streamlined digital encoding process and putting it up, and then you're vending the comic. You've cut out a big portion of the middleman who takes a cut there. That's a pretty big deal. That allows you to lower your cover price. It allows you to cut your costs while still maintaining a good, or at least a reasonable rate for the publisher and the creator. And, I mean, the funny part of that model is a lot of your distributors will work for free. You're just providing a link up there for somebody to grab and quickly download and consume the content. If I'm doing that, I'm in effect selling your comics for nothing. I'm just sharing. And that's an interesting prospect too. If you're an indie company or you're somebody completely small, you have no pre-existing kind of business setup for yourself, that's a pretty interesting prospect for you. You could set up a system using Dropbox or just existing tools where you've got your comic up there and you use a product like Square or there's a couple to basically monetize your comic. There'd be some technical understanding, wiring it all up. You put it up and you just start sharing it out. Why don't you go buy this? When you click on it, it asks for 99 cents. The only money is going directly from the person paying it to the indie comic creator or company. It's an interesting model, and it's something that can lower the prices down without breaking the world. Now, I mentioned comic stores in the last video. Yeah, this hurts comic stores, absolutely. But I also think it's largely inevitable, particularly for new comics. The new comics do not have the collector value that older comics do in most cases. So, you're still going to need a printed copy. You're still going to need to bid that way. But this is a way that you can start to get mass out there. Right now, comics is in a space where they need eyeballs. They just need readers. And this is a way to do it. Anyway, that's kind of my prediction. I mean, the funny part is people who are influencers who have, and I know I've used in the last video and this one, the diversity in comics guy, Richard Meyer. He's very opinionated. He's done some videos. He's leaned into outrage more than I would like, and he I don't like the continual beating up at the same targets for boredom reason more than anything. I mean, it's just how many videos can I hear about Heather Antos before I'm tired? And, yes, I from what I gather, he hasn't talked about Antos in a long time. That's just when I was engaging with the content back in 2017, early 2018, there was just too much of it, and all the rest. But and it's a huge but. He's got a very strong, loyal audience that listens to him, and he is putting out content that, yeah, it leans too much into kind of, outrage, SJW, kind of, beating up constantly, but it's unique. It draws viewers, and he's got a loyal following. He's got people who come back video after video. So in the craziest world, in this new system, he's incredibly valuable as a distributor in a very weird sense of the world. If you think about somebody coming up and saying, "Hey, I want to promote on your channel, and I've got a very quick way to click and buy," not just the Indiegogos, not at a $25 price point. I'm talking about a $1 price point. He could move a lot of books. So if you're Marvel and DC, and by the way, they would never do it. They would be completely opposed to it. You would be smart to start working with a guy like that to say, we're going to give you comics. You seem to have a better attach rate, a better way to influence readers than some of these new sites we've been sending comps to that we're not getting a return on. I don't know. It's an interesting world. Like I said, they're never going to do that with him. But it does point out that some of the people that the publishers are going to need to rely on are different than who they have been relying on. And watching that all unfold over the next 5-10 years is going to be absolutely fascinating to watch. Anyway, this one went longer, so let me stop here. Like, subscribe, comment. Would love to have you share with a friend. And thanks for listening.